Okay, this is Geometry Exit Ticket 26.2 Video Key, and welcome. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into a follow-up to our do now. So in the do now, we were able to work out by drawing this extra point P that was the same distance from M that H was from M. So we made a extension of HP. So now MP is congruent to HM. And we worked out ultimately that HJKP was a parallelogram, which meant that HM was parallel to JK. But that has further implications. So here's what we want to consider. In the do now, we worked through steps to prove that HM was parallel to JK by adding on that point. To do that, we prove that PKJH is a parallelogram. Given the opposite sides of a parallelogram are parallel and congruent, what can we say about JK and HP? Now, we know that they are parallel. Okay, so JK is going to be parallel to HP. But since they're opposite sides of a parallelogram, and we can say JK is congruent to HP. Okay, so this here is congruent to this. Now, since JK and HP have to be congruent because they're opposite sides of a parallelogram, how can we use the information we've already have to prove that the measure of HM is 1/2 of the measure of JK? We intentionally drew MP to be congruent to HM. Okay, so what we can say is by division, or we can say M is the midpoint. We can either say by division, or we can say M is the midpoint of HP. So HM is 1/2 the measure of HP by definition of a midpoint. Okay, now once we've done that, by transitive property, and by, we can say that by transitive property, really, we can say that HM is 1/2 also the measure of JK by transitive, because or by division, because HM divides a segment that is congruent to HP to JK into two equal portions. Okay, so that tells us that HM is going to be 1/2 of JK. All right, so this last one, I'm not going to really give an answer so much as your answers are going to vary, but you want to think about the two parts of the proof and the do now and the exit ticket. What is the value of the option of drawing extra lines and expanding elements of the diagram that are given? Like, to play with it a bit. What is the advantage? What does that do for you? A lot of the things that you're going to look at, you're going to say, I have no idea what to do. Start to play with it and see what is revealed. That's exactly how this proof was developed. People were just playing with lines and dots and compasses and straight edges, and they eventually played around with this until they came up with something that worked, that showed, they were like, this seems like it should be true. It should be HM should be 1/2 of JK. It should be parallel to JK, but I need to prove it. And they played around and drew outside the line and messed around until they found something. So mess around with these things. Don't get yourself stuck. Play with it. Play with, some of the paths you take are not going to work, and that's okay. And some of the paths will. But the more you play with it, the more paths are going to present to you, the more possibilities are going to show up. And there are usually more than one way to prove these things. All right, I hope that